we will be actually talking about the visitation of the angels, and I'll share that with you. But this week we're going to talk about He knows our names. God knows our names, and He loves us so much. I mean, I'll tell you, girls, if you could even begin to realize how much God loves you, you would just absolutely melt into little puddles because He loves you so much. So anyway, I was engaged to a guy in college. His name was Jim, and he was a Christian. I'm going to unwrap myself. There we go. I don't know how I got wrapped up already. But anyway, he was a Christian, and there should be absolutely no reason that he wasn't just right for me. And he had asked me to marry him, and I said yes. And one night before I was going to go home, or I wasn't going to go home actually, I was going to stay there, and I was going to work until we got married, and just I had all these plans. And the Lord said, Sharon, He woke me up. He said, Sharon, you can't marry Jim. And I said, Lord, what's wrong with him? He's a Christian. There shouldn't be anything wrong with him. Why can't I marry him? And over, all night, the Lord kept saying, Sharon. I mean, it just was constant. You cannot marry Jim, and you've got to tell him tomorrow. And I said, Lord, well, for one thing, there's no boys back in Boise. I could just look at our youth group, and I thought, there's just not anybody that I'd be interested in. But anyway, I finally said, okay, Lord, I don't know why that you want me not to marry Jim, but I have to say yes to you. And so the next day, Jim came over, and I said, Jim, I can't marry you. He said, you can't marry me? And I said, God said I can't marry you. And he said that God told me that I could marry you. And I said, I'm sorry, Jim. I don't know why, but God has just told me that you are not the one for me, and you can't marry me. We can't get married. And I mean, he was really upset. I mean, he cried, and everybody, we all cried. And he left, and I called my mom and dad and said, can you come pick me up, Daddy, because I'm not going to marry Jim. And when we got here, he said, boy, I'm sure glad you're not marrying Jim. I said, Daddy, I like Jim. He said, he's not the one for you. And I said, that's what God said. And then my brother Ted, he says, I didn't like Jim. he was young, but he said, I didn't like him. I said, Ted, I didn't know that. Why didn't you say something? I don't know if it would have made a difference, but anyway. And so my sister was kind of ambiguous. She just thought, well, Sharon, that's the way it goes. Anyway, so Alan and I figured out later that just about that time, he was trying to decide if he was going to go to college for artwork, or if he would go to get the guard out, or get something, his military out of the way. And he thought, you know what? He was just walking down the street, and he just turned into the place that said USA wants you. And he said, I think I'm going to get my military duty out of the way first. And so he turned in, and as luck would have it, not luck, but as God would have it, they said, you know what? This is the first time in many years we've sent some people over to Boise. But I think we're going to send you to Boise to do your training. And of course, he didn't know any different. He thought, that's fine, I'll go. So anyway, that Saturday night, this was Sunday, this was Saturday, our kids were out giving out tracts downtown. And they were at the bar places, and every place, there was different places they went, and they were giving out tracts. And Alan had just stopped to tie his shoe. So it's just so incredible the way this worked out. He stopped and tied his shoe, and when he stood up, the light changed back to red, and our kids came around and said, "Hey, would you like to go to church?" And he said, he looked at his friend who was also Christian. He said, well, I guess so. And they said, he said, "I don't have a car." And he said, "Well, we'll pick you up tomorrow." And so he thought they were ready. So that morning, everything in his closet fell down. I mean, he was just a mess. He was putting stuff up, and he just didn't think he could make it to church. And excuse me, maybe if somebody could give me a little water, that would be nice. But anyway, they said, "We'll wait for you. You're okay. We'll wait for you." So. So they waited for him, and he came to church. Well, meanwhile, I came to church a little bit late, and I said, "Daddy, I'm sorry. I just got caught up in the wrong time," and all that stuff. And Dad said, "It's okay." He had the Sunday school class. Thank you, lady. Thank you very much. So, Alan, I was in class. Did it come off again? No, there it is. Okay, I was in class, and I walked in, and I talked to my dad, and I saw this guy, this hunk sitting over there with blue eyes. But he didn't even look at me, and I thought, my goodness, people at least look at somebody when they walk in. He told me later he looked at me every time I looked away. But anyway, I saw him sitting by a gal that I knew that was kind of slutty. And I thought, it's really good that she came to church this morning, because I thought she really needs it. So anyway, I thought, he's already picked up somebody. Isn't that something? I just, So anyway, so I went out of church, and my dad invited the boys over for dinner. He said, "That's the last time I'm going to do that, Sharon." But anyway, so we were having dinner, and I had told Charm earlier, I says, "Charm, if they want to do anything, you and I are together. They're sitting in the back seat. I am not going to be interested in anybody, because I've got to get over Jim, and I've just got to, go on with my life, and I'll just wait a while before I get involved with anybody." And so we decided to go out, and meanwhile, Alan had told his friend, "She's mine." Well, the first thing that happened, we went down to Julia Davis Park because we ran out of gas. Can you believe it? But we decided just to not forget about the gas, and we just go for a walk and figure out the gas later. So Alan jumped out of the car and came over and grabbed my hand, and we were walking around just looking at stuff. And they used to have pictures of, they had living setups of people from the olden days. Do you remember that? They used to have that there. And as we were walking around, I was thinking in my mind, I wonder how these people were thinking that. I was just thinking in my mind, kind of thinking about, and Alan would say, "I wonder what these guys were doing," and you were thinking about. I said, "What?" And every place we went, he would say what I was thinking, and I was blown away, because I had dated guys that's you're my woman type thing. You know, guys in high school, they're athletes and, you know, really tough guys. And I hadn't ever met anybody that was like Alan. And so I just kind of melted in a little puddle as we were walking along. Anyway, we got the car fixed up and the guy, Alan said, you know what, Sharon? I'd like to take you out tomorrow. And I said, really? I said, well, I have completely forgot that I wasn't going to go with anybody for a long time. And I said, sure. And so he took me out and he said, Sharon, I do not believe in love at first sight. But he said, Sharon, I believe I've fallen for you. I don't care. I know it's not somebody we talk about. And inside I was thinking the same thing. I said, honey, no. I said, Alan, you can't really feel that way. And he says, I know it, and I'm going to tell your dad tomorrow. And I said, no, Alan, don't tell Dad. That scared me to death. Sure enough, he did tell my dad tomorrow. He says, I'm going to come back and marry your daughter. And Alan, and my dad said, no, you're not. Just like I thought. And Alan said, yes, I am. Well, my dad got the numbers of Alan's pastor. He got the number of his best friend. He got the number of his employer. All these people, and he called them the next day. And he asked him out, and he got a good report. Good, thank the Lord for that. But I thought it was horrible. I thought I am 20 years old. I should know what's good for me. And he said, I told Alan, I said, I'm just not sure about this. And so I decided I'd make an appointment with my dad. Alan had gone, and he was writing me every single solitary day, and I did not write back. In fact, you guys, I have on my desk right here, if we can get those out, kid, and we'll do them later, but you guys can pass them around. You can look at the pictures. Don't look inside, just look at the pictures on the outside. But Alan wrote me every single day, and he would write about the postman, because I told him that the postmen were looking for his letters and going through the bag and looking for his letters. And so he did a little series on postmen as he was writing all these letters for me. Well, I just made an appointment. I was going to tell my dad what I thought of him looking at, asking all those people about me, because I should be old enough to know what was good for me. And so I remember it was at 534 Federal Way, and my brother had just mowed the yard. It smelled so good back there. And my dad was sitting in the yard, and I stood up because I wanted to tell him how I felt. So I said, Daddy, I just don't understand. How come you had to call all these people to find out what kind of guy Alan was? He was a good guy. And he says, well, I know. I got a good report. And I said, I just have to tell you, I'm really upset with you for calling. And the tears began to stream down his cheeks. And he said, Sharon, when you were born, it was like God gave me the most beautiful pearl necklace. And he said, all through these years, I've watched over you. I've cherished you. I've loved you. Could I leave my beautiful pearl necklace lying around for just anybody to pick up? What would you guys do? I threw my arms around my dad's neck and I said, Daddy, I didn't know you felt that way about me. He says, Sharon, I do. I love you. You're my firstborn. You're my child. And I care about you. And later on, I thought about the fact that God thinks of us as a beautiful pearl necklace, doesn't he? He thinks of us as a beautiful, beautiful diamond. I have it written down somewhere, but I don't think I could find it. But it was, Psalm 62:3 talks about how we are God's crown, a precious possession that he holds carefully in his hand. And I'll tell you what, if you're feeling unloved and unimportant right now, you need to change how you feel, because God loves you so much. You are his pearl necklace. Every one of you are his pearl necklace. And he loves you, and he watches over you, and he cares for you, and he cares what happens to you. Isn't that a wonderful thought, you guys? I just loved thinking about that. Well, like I said, Alan came back, and first thing he did was get out the old ring. We went out on a date, and he said, Sharon, I love you, and this is it. And your dad said it was okay. And of course, that was real important to me. And he said, will you marry me? And he handed me the little ring. And I jumped out of the car. He told me, I can't remember this even. I jumped out of the car, and I ran around and looked under the lights. He says, what are you doing? I said, I just want to see it good. Anyway, I said yes. And I was so excited. I was engaged, you guys. It was just so much fun. And my sister just thought it was so much fun. And my two sisters and some people were coming from out of town to visit us. And so I told Alan, I said, I want to introduce you to my new fiance, to these guys. So I just was so excited. And when they came in, walking in, and I came up to them, I says, I want you to meet my new fiance. His name went right out of my head. I couldn't believe it. I was trying to, and Mom came around to the other side and he whispered in my ears, and she said, it's Alan, silly. And I said, Alan White. He would have never known. He would just thought I was struck dumb by love or something. But the next day, I found a card, and this is what I wanted to show you guys. Oh, Handy, you can hand it to me. This is so much fun. I found a card, and the outside it said, well, I'll play it for you. Can you hear it? Let me call you sweetheart. I'm in love with you. And on the inside it said, 'cause I can't remember your day. I just couldn't resist it. We've laughed about that a lot of times since. I don't know how he felt about it at first, but we made up it. He loved it. But anyway, I'll tell you what, kids, girls, God cares so much about us. He loves us so much. He loves us by name. He knows who we are and what we are. And as I've been going through life, I've found so many people that never had a dad like me, that didn't have somebody that loved him like my dad loved me. And I met so many people. And when I was in Japan, for instance, I met this little gal, and she had, and this was another miracle of God. She had watched the mission place where I was. She had seen it for years and always wondered about it, but never came in. And that particular day, somebody asked her to come, that she knew, to come to the meeting. And she came. Her name was Yoku. And she came to our meeting. And I shared this story about my dad and how much I shared this whole story. And they just loved the story. But when I told him about how much that we were a beautiful, priceless pearl necklace in God's hand, she absolutely dissolved into tears, and she cried and cried and cried. And I told him that he loved us so much that he wrote our names on the palm of his hand so he could look at it every once in a while and say, "That's my kid." Well, she said, "I want this Jesus you're talking about." She had never been to a service before, but she wanted that Jesus. And so I said, "Are you sure?" I wanted to be sure because I didn't want to be out of order. You know what I mean? I just wanted to be sure that she really knew what she was saying. And she says, "I want this Jesus." So we prayed for her. And when we got done praying, she said, "Is my name there yet?" And the lady said, that was with me, she says, "What?" I said, "What?" And she says, "Is my name there yet? On his hand?" And I said, "Yes, your name is on his hand." And this little gal, she met a Christian guy, and she went with with a mission and traveled all over the country and all over in a ship, all over. And then she landed up in England, and they are still serving God. Isn't that wonderful? I heard about her last time we went to Japan, and she just is doing great. And I don't know about her folks. I think that she has was still praying for them, but I knew that they were going to find Jesus too, because she was just telling everybody that she knew that God loves them and knows them by name. Isn't that a wonderful story? I love that story. Well, we're going to talk about another wonderful story about God knowing us by name. I do want to tell you about one other gal I met. She was here in Washington, and I had shared with her. And she absolutely could not believe that I had shared with her about God knowing her name and all these things. And she came up to me and says, "Sharon, I'd like to pray for you because I've been horribly molested when I was a child." And she said, "I love God, but I can't even think about calling God Father. I just can't even think about it." But she said, I haven't been able to write music for the longest time because of just getting all blocked up and all the hurt and all the anger that she felt at what had happened to her. And she said, "Would you pray that God will set me free so I can write praises to him again?" And I said, "Absolutely, I would love to pray for you." Well, the next day she came running in. I was just getting ready to leave, and she said, "Sharon, I have to tell you that I wrote you a song." And it was a beautiful song, and I was going to bring it today, but I forgot. But I will bring it tomorrow because we can sing it all together. It's a gorgeous song. It just talks about how God knows your name in just such a beautiful way. But anyway, and there's one other one I wanted to tell you about too before I go to the next one. Yes. Thank you very much. You just know what I need. Pardon me, you guys. Oh boy. Anyway. So she, like I said, this little gal, she had I met her at a meeting that she came to that somebody had invited her to. She was American Japanese, and she had come to Japan with her husband, who she had met, and she said she decided she was going to marry him, and she married him, and she says, "I know my folks are praying for me, but I haven't served the Lord for a long time." And I said, "Well, my name is Sharon, and your name is Sharon too. We'll just see what God has to say about this." So I went ahead and shared that in that service that day. And afterwards, she came up to me, and she had big tears in her eyes. And she said, "Oh, Sharon, I know my folks have been praying for me, but I can call them now and tell them that I found Jesus today." And she accepted Jesus into her heart. And it was just absolutely wonderful. And I just thought it was kind of neat. The two Sharons, we just got to find Jesus together. She forgot to find Jesus. But anyway, we're going to go on. We're going to end up with, we're going to end up with Mission Philippines. And this, you guys, you've heard, some of you guys have heard this before, but you haven't heard it from me. Anyway, about 4 a.m, the light came on. Let's see. The light came on in my room, and I opened my eyes, and there were 2 cots in the room. I was sleeping on one, and when I looked over at the empty one, I saw Gabriel sitting there. "How did you find me here?" I asked, and he said, "We didn't have any trouble finding you because we arranged for you to be here," Gabriel replied. And that was when he went to the Philippines. It felt strange to be sitting in San Francisco airport on a foreign country, wondering what's going to happen when you get there. And that's the way I felt. This is my dad. I felt I was utterly compelled to go to the Philippines. Somebody had written a check for him to go, just the exact amount he needed. He had been asked to go, but he hadn't really known what he was going to do until he got that check, and he knew that God had said he was going to the Philippines. Well, the week before I was to leave on this mission, the angel Gabriel met me and spoke to me about the work and gave me assurance in my heart that what was happening was something that God himself had planned. He gave me the names of people to whom he had been ministering that were important to the mission, but were given as confirmation to me on this visit, that visit was from God and that it was not just a visit. The plane was scheduled to depart at midnight, and a young Filipino sat down. We had an interesting conversation, and when we boarded the plane, I discovered the same man was sitting next to me. I immediately got out the list of the names given to me by Gabriel to check things out, and the name Sariano was at the very top of the list. I took a deep breath, and this young man asked this young man if Sariano was the correct way to pronounce his name. And I wish you could have seen the look on his face when he asked him that. He said he looked to see if there was anything on his body that would identify him, but there was nothing, and he quickly got up and took a seat in another part of the plane. So that. Prior to the departure from Hawaii, the stewardess announced that everyone must take their assigned seats because of the new passengers coming aboard. Reluctantly, the young man came back to sit down beside me, so I thought it would be well to calm him down. I certainly didn't want him to be uneasy for the entire 10-hour flight. I simply and honestly told him that I knew his name because God gave it to me. When I said this, he looked around again, but there was not an empty place for him to sit, so he had to stay there. And I told him that God loved him, and that this trip was going to be more than just a visit, because he had been chosen to carry some good news to his family. I also told him that God has had his eye on him and had known him all along and cared for him. He said, how could God know me? I don't know him. I go to the priest and the priest probably tells God about me, but I don't really know God. And I explained to him that God knew him and that God had prepared him and had directed this entire trip and even given me his name. And then I said that God had also seen fit to see to it that when the seats were assigned to the 300 people on the plane, his seat would be right next to mine. Isn't that neat, guys? I love it. His eyes were wide with astonishment as I told him there these things. And he said, do you mean that God is really interested in me and with all that he has to do? Do you mean that God really cares about someone who doesn't even know him? And I answered, yes, he wants you to commit your life to him in order to let him know that you are thankful to him for his concern for you, as great as he is and as insignificant as you are. Right then and there, this young man accepted Jesus as his Savior and Lord. He excitedly said, let me tell you about my father and my family. I remember many times as my father would look up into the night sky and see the stars, and he would say, surely there must be a God somewhat place, if only we could find him. And then he continued, now I'm going to go back and tell him that he, where is it? That he is right. Tell him that he was right. What happened?